So I've got this theory, and I'm not really a conspiracy theorist, but I do have this theory about something that I think over the last 30 years has been a big contributor to um, obesity, the high rise of obesity, high rise of metabolic, not being metabolically healthy. So, metabolic disease, I guess, is the way I want to say that. And
Right.
then I think it's been a major increase in a particular industry, and it's become a billion-dollar industry. So, would you like to hear this theory?
Yeah, Brian, tell me what's on your mind, man. That sounds interesting.
Okay. So, it kind of goes back to the early 90s, 1990s, but let me give you a little bit of a history lesson first.
Okay.
So, we go back to the early 1800s, and a French um, scientists started using the term calories. This is in the early 1800s. Here's the catch: it had nothing to do with nutrition back then. So, this is where you get, and I believe it's 1 kilogram of water. This was his theory: 1 kilogram of water heated by 1 degree Celsius, and that's how you measured this energy, right? And he said
Right.
that was a calorie, right?
Right.
Okay, so he did this in the early 1800s, and it had to do with steam engines, not nutrition. And he started to teach this. He was, a teacher, and he started to teach this. And then we go about 60 to 70 years later, and there's a new classification for a calorie called a kcalorie or kilocalorie, or you could even say capital C calorie. And basically, one of those capital C calories was equal to 1,000 of the lower case C calories that was originally talked about in the early 1800s. Okay.
Sure.
And this is where we start to think a little bit about nutrition, because when we talk about calories and nutrition, it's a capital C. Okay.
Right.
So maybe 10 years after that is the first time it's used in terms of nutrition. And um, this was an American, I don't remember if he was a scientist, I can't remember exactly what it was, but he took food and he put it into a bomb calorimeter and measured the energy of the food. Okay. So this is where we get um,
Right.
our measurements today of 4 calories for a gram of carbohydrate or protein and 9 calories for a gram of fat. And we still use that today. So this was in the late
Right.
1800s that this was, figured out, invented, whatever you want to say. By the time we got to the early 1900s, this kind of became a standard for measuring food. So that gives you the history.
Mhm.
Now we're going to get into where the theory,
Yep.
this, I don't want to call it a conspiracy theory, but it's a theory that comes into play. And so we go to the FDA in the United States in the early 90s. They are looking to put out requirements that all packaged food has to have um, their whole nutrition label, right? It has to have,
Right.
your carbohydrates, your protein, fats, all that kind of stuff, and calories listed on it. So this is a requirement that they're looking to do. This is in 1993. And so in order to properly measure this, they have to come up with a amount of calories that is a recommended amount, so that they could say, you look at this food and then you look at another food and you can compare it based on the calories and so forth, right?
Right.
So what they did is they looked at surveys from the late 80s and the early 90s, and all those surveys that they looked at, they found that the average for adult women was between 1,800 to 2,200 calories consumed in a day. Now, let me explain. Calorie can't actually technically be consumed because it's energy, right? So this
Right.
is the equivalent of 1,800 to 2,200 calories in actual food. Like if you took that food and put it in a bomb calorimeter, it would be estimated somewhere around that amount of calories. But you're actually eating the food, right? So
Right.
so that's what their estimation was with women, 1,800 to 2,200 calories. For men, it averaged between 2,000 to 3,000 calories. So they took that and they said, on average, that's about 2,000 calories. I'm not exactly sure how they got that, but that's what they said.
Right.
So that became the basis of a 2,000 calorie standard diet. Those averages of people, what they were eating, doesn't necessarily mean that that was the right amount that they should be eating, but that's what they were eating in the surveys back in the late 80s and early 90s. Okay. So here's the big caveat here. When the FDA comes out with this, they come out with the, you know, this requirement, and as of 1994, all companies had to make sure that they had their nutrition labels on their packaged foods. They also say this is a 2,000 calorie thing is our measurement so that you can compare different foods. It is not necessarily the recommended amount of calories somebody should eat to be healthy. If they go on to say that to be healthy, it should be somewhere between 1,600 to 3,000 calories. And it depends on three things. It depends on whether you're a
Right.
male or a female. It depends on your age, and it depends on your size, basically, how tall you are, how big you are, that kind of stuff, right? So you could be anywhere in that range of 1,600 calories to 3,000 calories to be the right amount of calories, they say, in order to have the right healthy amount of for you to have to for the energy you need to use in a day. Okay. Here's the problem. Everybody looked at that 2,000 recommendation, and I mean, what do we even say today? It's it. We need to eat 2,000 calories in a day to maintain weight. If we want to lose weight, we need to eat less than 2,000 calories. But that isn't what they meant it to be. And they even said what might be right for a person is probably something between 1,600 and 3,000. So you could have, let's say, a, a female that's like 5 foot tall, and it might be more around 1,600 calories. And you could have a male that is like 6'6", and it could be the 3,000 number, right? But everybody looked at it as I need to eat less than
Right.
2,000 calories a day in order to lose weight. So if you're the type of person that was worried about your weight or whatever, and you wanted to think about that, that's what you did. So you restricted calories. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If you're eating less than what you should, because in order to restrict your calories, you have to eat little food, less food, right? So if you're eating less than what you should, you've got some things that are going to happen. Your metabolism's going to start slowing down, right? You're not getting the nutrients that you need. You're not getting the vitamins, the minerals that you need because you're eating less food. And let's face it, people said, I'm looking at calories. So they didn't necessarily just go and pick the best foods to eat. They could be looking at, okay, I'm going to eat a bag of chips. It's this amount of calories, and I got to factor in so that I don't go over 2,000 calories or 1,800 if I'm trying to lose weight or something, right? So
Right.
it's even worse in terms of the nutrients they're supposed to be getting. Very quickly, it was realized that this is making something that we already kind of saw. Vitamins were starting to become a thing. The supplement industry was becoming a thing in the 80s, but very quickly, people are getting less and less healthy and having issues with vitamin deficiencies and so forth, right? So the U.S., the Congress, passes laws that actually make it easier for the supplement industry. They don't have to go to the FDA and get their supplements approved by the FDA and so forth. So now we've created this industry for supplements that is blowing up. And as of the early to mid 90s through now, it's blown up into a multi-billion-dollar industry. I believe worldwide it's now like $150 billion industry, and in the US it's $50 billion. The
Wow.
same time, what happened in the early 90s, people started to worry about their calories. They were gaining weight because they slowed down their metabolism. And let's face it, like, people aren't going to look at, okay, if I'm eating this much energy, I need to have this much energy to lose things, so I need to work out and do that stuff, right? They're going to look to do the easiest thing possible, and that's just restricting their calories because they're being told, well, they weren't necessarily told that, but it was assumed, and then probably in ads made it seem even more so that it should be a 2,000 calorie diet. You got companies like Weight Watchers that are over there telling you to restrict your calories, and other people that were like health coaches or whatever saying, yeah, you need to be down like 1,600, 1,800 calories. So everybody is now deficient in nutrients. They're not eating enough, so their metabolism is down. They're tired. Maybe they're not sleeping right now. And it's just a spiral effect. People are starting to gain more weight. Like, obesity has skyrocketed since the low or the early to mid 90s. Metabolic disease has skyrocketed. And the the supplement industry skyrocketed into a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it went hand in hand because supplements were needed because people were so worried about their calorie intake, and they were getting deficient. So that is my whole theory. Basically, by using calories and using this guideline that wasn't even supposed to be the average of what you should eat, we kind of created this whole mess. And let's remember here, I said when I gave the history thing, early 1800s we came up with calories, but it was for steam engines. It wasn't applied to nutrition until the late 1800s and really accepted globally until the early 1900s. Before that, we didn't need to count calories, and we were doing just fine. Metabolic disease was very little, obesity was very little, and people just figured out what they needed to eat and were healthy. So that's my whole theory. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Brian, I like the fact that you brought up the 2,000 calorie per day diet because if you read the back of most packages, when you read the US RDA, their US recommended daily allowance, it always says based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So that's like the magic number they came up with. And you can fact check me on this. Read the back of every package, and it always says based on a 2,000 calorie per day diet. You look at somebody like a young female, or say a 70-year-old female that's 5'2", 100 pounds, versus me or you. I mean, where does that 2,000 calories come from? What if it's me working at a desk all day, or me carrying shingles up a ladder all day, outside working? Um, and about the supplement industry, I mean, supplements are off the chain. There's stores that sell nothing but supplements. There's the vitamin store. There's some of these other ones. There's websites dedicated to only selling supplements. And to your point, when people start reducing the calories and reducing the calories, especially with the nutrient deficient food that's available in market, in mass out there today, you almost feel like you have to take supplements. So if you cut your calories back to 1,600 a day, and you're eating chips and Doritos and Cheetos and all that kind of stuff and drinking soda, there's no vitamin D in there. There's no vitamin C. There's no zinc. There are all the things that we need. So you really have no option other than to go to the supplement store and supplement that stuff and spend all those dollars. The problem I have with that is most supplements are very not very well absorbed. They go in your mouth and out your
Mm.
rear end. And you never really absorb that nutrition. So it's almost like a vicious circle. You're eating this nutrient deficient food. You're eating in this huge calorie deficit, and you're taking these supplements that your body's not even absorbing, maybe 10% of them. Um, yeah, so that's a great point. I never thought about it, and I don't know that the people that came up with the supplement industry were nefarious initially in their in the beginning, but once they saw that people were becoming so sick and so nutrient deficient, because you can eat 10,000 calories a day and still starve your body from nutrients. Step in the supplement industry. Here's your Centrum multivitamin. This is for men over 50, women over 60. This is for young, healthy athletes. We've got a pill for you. And in my opinion, um, and I've watched a lot of documentaries on this and stuff, a lot of those supplements that are sold in the store are in forms that are really not readily absorbed by the body. So it's just this round and round thing. And then you go to the doctor. Doctor says, I'm sick. I have no energy. My eyesight's going bad. The doctor says, well, go to the drugstore and get some zinc, get some vitamin D, get some, beta carotene or whatever. And you take these factory made pills and your situation doesn't get any better. So they tell you to add some more supplements or increase your dose. So I can definitely see how this probably didn't start out nefarious, but it kind of has been co-opted, I think, in the addition to the fact that our food is so unbelievably nutrient deficient. When it's so easy just to eat a proper human diet, like you eat, Brian, and like I eat, where you get those nutrients. You don't worry about calories because I eat till I'm full, so I'm satisfied. I feel amazing, which tells you that I'm not nutrient deficient, and I really don't take any supplements. And because I don't feel like I need to, I'm getting all the nutrition, all the vitamins and minerals and everything I need from my proper human diet. And I don't count calories at all because I don't think it's necessary if you're getting, because like I say, you can eat 20,000 calories a day and you can still be starving your body of nutrients. Eat 4 boxes of Krispy Kreme donuts, 5 boxes. There are people out there that do that and they are nutrient deficient. Therefore, they probably feel like they need to supplement. So I agree with you 100%, Brian. I think you've made a fantastic point and you explained it very well. And it sounds like you did a ton of research to kind of find the genesis of how we got to where we are.
Yeah. I think probably the most important thing that I found that was just mind boggling to me was, and you said it, all the packaging says this is based on a 2000 calorie standard diet, but that wasn't meant to tell people that they should eat 2000 calories in a diet. That was meant so you can compare foods and that all foods would be based on this 2000 calorie diet in terms of the daily percentages and so forth, right? But
Right.
they even specifically said back then, your diet, you could be anywhere between 1600 and 3000. I mean, 3000 is almost double 1600. It's a huge wide range. And that got lost very quickly. And I can tell you, like me, I did this. I go back to 2017. I needed to lose weight, and I found this diet that looked fairly good to do, and it was all about restricting your calories. My calories as a 6'4", 350-pound guy, whatever I was at the time, my my calories were supposed to be around 1800 or less calories a day. And you know what? Because you're eating less food, you do lose weight. You don't get healthy. You do lose weight. I lost weight. I was still sore all the time, but I lost quite a bit of weight. But here's the big thing. I could only do it for so long because it wasn't really sustainable because my body was getting deficient in nutrients. I There were certain things I was taking, but I also didn't want I not well not only did I not want to, but I didn't have the money to buy a bunch of supplements So I just went back to eating more. I couldn't continue to eat like that. So I went back to eating more and I gained all the weight back really quickly, probably quicker than I lost the weight. And that's what happens. That's why maybe calories that, you know, it's a real thing. We don't actually eat the calorie, but the representation to the food is a real thing. But that could be so detrimental and harmful to people because we're not all educated on this stuff. I'm not even that educated on this stuff. I wasn't before for sure. And the first thing we do, the first thing that most people do when they talk about losing weight is restricting calories. The first thing you hear people say is you need to take in less calories than you're burning, right? So,
Right.
especially people that don't want to do the exercise and that, the first thing that they're going to think is, I'm just going to eat less calories, which means you're eating less food and you're hurting your body. You're slowing down your metabolism. You're losing nutrients. And over time, that that gets pretty bad. That can get pretty bad. So
And Brian, there's ways, relatively easy ways to measure your metabolism. And bear with me, where I'm going with this is when you do what you did, and I did the same thing. I lost 100 pounds by starving myself. I'm working out like crazy for a year. I lost 100 pounds in a year back in 2017. My problem when I got down to my ideal weight is I had very little muscle and I was cold. I shivered all the time. I'm a hot natured guy. I could not get warm. I just shivered. I was so miserable. And now they have ways using your CO2. So we obviously breathe in oxygen, nitrogen, all that stuff, but we exhale CO2. They can measure your exhale CO2 and look at your metabolic rate. And study after study after study shows when you restrict calories for long periods of time in order to lose weight, when you go back to eating normally, you burn less calories doing the same activities. Your body downregulates. Your body downregulates. It's trying to not starve to death. So by restricting calories, you're telling your body there's famine, there's not enough food, even though we're surrounded by food on every corner. So when your body downregulates your metabolism because you cut calories drastically to lose weight, it makes it harder every single time. That's why people that do yo-yo diets, they think, oh, I'm getting older. It's harder and harder to lose this weight. There's a little bit of truth in that, but the bigger truth is you've damaged your metabolism by severely restricting calories and making your body believe that there's a famine going on and it's trying to survive, not thrive.
yeah.
So,
All
like you said,
right.
calories, the way we look at it, the representation of calories in food, you have to pay attention to it because if you don't move your body a lot, and even if you eat the proper human diet and somehow you manage to take in 5 or 6,000 calories a day, odds are you will gain weight. But it's just really hard to eat a proper human diet with the proper ratios of fat and protein to overeat. So it's kind of calorie restricting on its own. However, I take in between, when I do track and I look at it, I'm between 2,500 and 3,500 calories a day. Now I'm pretty busy. I'm on my feet a lot. And of course, I work out a lot, but that keeps me, my weight maintained. But if you look at all the websites you can go to, it's saying I'm eating way too many calories and that I should be gaining weight, but I'm not. So the whole calories in, calories out thing is, there's a smidgen of truth in it, but it leaves an awful lot of context out.
Yeah. And
Anyway, Brian, great
like
discussion.
I said, calories weren't even invented yet before the early 1800s. They weren't even considered for nutrition until the late 1800s. And we've been eating for thousands and thousands of years. Our, ancestors to humans were eating for millions of years and didn't have to worry about counting calories.
Right.
Why is it something that we should do now? I think that it really is just detrimental to us, that instead we should be eating the right, like you said, the proper human diet, and you're gonna get full and you're not gonna be able to overeat, like you said. So
Yeah. Anyway, great discussion, Brian. Thanks for
all
bringing
right.
that up. That puts a whole new light on a topic that most people won't take the time to learn about, but will simply follow the guidelines of 2,000 calories. And I've never seen a fat lion or fat tiger in the wild, and they don't count calories. They just eat a
Yeah.
proper species specific diet. And prior to the 18 or the 1900s, early 1900s, we didn't count calories either. That's and in the timeline of man, that's a very recent phenomenon, and it has not served us well. Look at us, you know.
Hey, yeah.